Who is Jeff Forrest and what inspired the birth of StackLab?
Um, well, I mean, I can answer that question in 50 different ways, but I think in the context of design, I'm an architect insofar as formal training is concerned, and I came from Calgary, Western Canada, and have a very sort of entrepreneurial spirit, I think, and a pragmatic approach to design as a function of that. It's sort of the Wild West a little bit out there, and I studied architecture in New York at the New York Institute of Technology, which is like a sister school to MIT. And then studied further in Calgary for more master's training, and then in Barcelona as well. So I've got a relatively broad scope insofar as training is concerned. But in my last semester of my master's, I became pretty frustrated with the sort of digital aspect of architecture and being constantly in front of a computer, and also sort of critical of the fact that a lot of the training isn't practical. And so I got on my motorcycle, which was the one tool I had for real applied design, right? And left school and went on a roughly month-long trip through the Rockies with a friend of mine. And when I was in Boulder, Colorado, I got a call from a friend in Toronto who said, come to Toronto and work with me in a timber mill for the summer. And, it'll just get your mind off of school and off of the computer. And it'll basically just be a couple months of working with our hands. Chainsaws out, shirts off. That was kind of the idea. So I beelined it to Toronto and instantly got very inspired by working with this old, very storied timber that this particular mill worked with. It was historic, reclaimed stuff. A lot of it actually was not raw, but rather old hemlock timbers that were formerly used in the wharf front in Toronto that were unearthed and had been buried underground for over 100 years. And so I really started to get this appreciation for storied materials with a big narrative quality. And also, frankly, those materials are complex because some of them are good, some of them are not good insofar as quality is concerned. And so I started building sort of systems around how to work the material without producing waste. And so in the beginning, I put out a few sort of public bids for projects in Toronto using the material. Immediately started thinking, as an entrepreneur and ways to turn that mill into a design business. And I would say shortly after starting to win RFPs, I got fired for being an insubordinate prick. And so I took all of the contracts with me, and the landlord who held the space that we were working in at the mill called me up and said, "I heard you got fired and you have all these projects. Why don't we work together?" So we ended up starting a business, and that eventually became StackLab. And it started out really as a business that was focused on producing projects, not necessarily just objects, but projects that was centered around material and material reuse. And over time, we developed collections of furniture, and people who were working with us saw what we could do and knew my background in architecture, so would periodically hire me to do architectural projects too. And so we just built this portfolio of work over time that was sort of multidisciplinary, and has really been ethos driven, but as I said, cross disciplinary. And as a last comment on that, I would say that over time, I've realized that the architectural side is less interesting to me. Not to say that I don't love my clients and appreciate all that, but speculative work where I have total control over what we produce is increasingly of interest. So now StackLab has kind of evolved yet again into a business that focuses on speculative work that we sell, and that's where we're at right now.
So, like you said, you are a multidisciplinary designer, but is there a favorite niche?
Right now, yes. I so the shortest way to explain that is industrial design, but I'm not interested in products. I'm interested in systems, and I'm interested in using systems to address larger questions, right? So in the true definition of design, which is like applied problem solving, let's call it applied critical thinking. I don't want to make a chair. I have no interest in making a chair, but I have interest in figuring out how to, reduce the amount of storage that's held in it, or inventory that's held in storage in regional manufacturers' facilities, right? I have an interest in figuring out how to transport that efficiently so that we use less gas. I have interest in the user experience of purchasing design, and facilitating customization. So that's to say that yes, industrial design, but increasingly I work with tech, and so we're starting to employ software development and engineering in lockstep with sort of true classic industrial design initiatives. But even in that way, the fact that we're not focused on the product as much as the system, and the system being an expression of an idea, I would say that where I put myself right now is as a true design generalist. No specialization, totally agnostic when it comes to approach, materials, execution. What I'm interested now in is let's look at problems objectively, and let's build teams around solving them.
All right, Jeff, since you're from Toronto, I'd like to ask you, how's the design landscape in Canada, and what role is StackLab playing that differentiates from the competition?
So it's funny you say this. My wife thinks I'm a snob, and I think I probably agree. To me, design is not a formal exercise. It's not about making a beautiful thing, and I think that it often is confused as that. To me, again, I look at it in the dictionary definition of the word. I look at it as applied critical thinking, full stop. And so when I look at the landscape, really here and worldwide, I actually see a lot of artistry, a lot of craft that is very beautiful and very well rendered. But I would say that from a design standpoint, there's only a handful of firms that are trying to solve problems, right? And the anecdote I use all the time is, we solved the problem of where to put our asses a long time ago, right? We've figured out what a chair needs to be, in prehistoric times. The question now is, how do we pursue product in a way that's responsible and in the way that really addresses the modern era, or the current era? And so that becomes less about the chair and more about supply chain. It has to deal with where the material comes from, what that material is, how it's transported, how it's turned, et cetera. What the implications are socially when you engage certain vendors. Is it responsible to hire somebody to make products in India or in China and ship them to Toronto, or should it be local, or regional for that matter? These are things that are of interest to me. So when you talk about the landscape, really the best way to put it is I have oodles of respect for my peers. I just am very snobby about the term design, and I would want to say that a lot of people here or in the community are practicing craft, and they're practicing artistry more so than problem solving. And my interest is in problem solving, and I would say that there's a handful of people that share that passion, And those people are ones that I look to for inspiration. Certainly, there's many that are far better than me, and that's where I like to park my ass for exciting conversations and discourse.
You
Excuse me,
started with,
I'm being profane today, but
oh, no
I'm
worries,
gonna.
that's not a problem. So you started with StackLab, but now you've added Stackable to your journey. What is the idea and the scope, and how different is it from StackLab?
That's a great question. Stackable a is a well, Stack Lab is an idea factory, right? At this point, it's a design office, and we produce or we develop speculative objects and projects for the most part, some client-based stuff. But really, what it is it's a place where I develop IP. Okay, and then Stackable is, and by the way, that IP again is not necessarily product, right? It's proofs of concept systems that are manifest as editioned, works, and those are kind of just the beginning, right? And so the idea with Stackable is it takes one of our Stack Lab proofs of concepts and turns it into a business that is sophisticated and is interested in taking that nugget, that idea that Stack Lab developed, and fully flushing it out. And so it is the first of those initiatives, and so far it's kicking butt, and we're really excited about it.
You've also collaborated with some prominent names like Sarah Coleman and Anthony Keller for your recent Salon collection. How would you narrate that experience, and what are the next big names that StackLab is scouting for?
Um, so I as I said, I mean, I'm a generalist, and I get very excited, and I get very stimulated working with others. My model is very collaborative. I literally I'm the dumbest one in my office by far. And the one thing I'm good at is building teams and having a nugget of an idea and getting the team collectively to offer their expertise to develop it, right? And so with people like Sarah Coleman or with Anthony Frank Keeler, who, by the way, was not just somebody who used our configurator to produce 3 pieces for our 2022 collection, but he also helped us develop our proprietary light discs, right? So he was actively involved in the development of a part. And we learned a ton from him. And we learned a ton from Sarah. Again, Stackable is a system, and I never even thought that it would be used in a way that was referential and sort of a cultural commentary. I always figured it would be applied color theory. I figured it would be way more sort of about personal color taste and composition. But Sarah, she made her objects say something socially, right? And that was a huge learning experience for me, and I was totally humbled by it, and frankly very tickled, because it opened up this whole world. When we were exhibiting in Isola, everybody was gravitating towards her works. Not to say the others weren't very coveted, but hers in particular stole the show because they deal with issues that are really intense, right? Like, they're all about the pandemic. So she has her first fixture is 2020, and it's a cigarette, right? Just to express her stress of dealing with that initial year. The second one, 2021, was a shotgun shell, and she was very vocal about the fact that that was the year she wanted to blow her brains out, and then in the last year, 2022, right around what we've been experiencing recently in American politics, with all this talk of, overturning Roe v. Wade and everything, she offered this pregnancy test, which was like such a loaded thing. And so when we were exhibiting, everybody loved that. And so again, because I like to talk about ideas more than anything, I learned from Sarah that this could be a vehicle for not just how things are made, and what product should be, but also how frankly deep and loaded with meaning they can be.
Would you like to give HomeCrux audience a sneak peek at what's cooking inside the StackLab Stackable Studios? What's next for you?
Right now, we're learning. I mean, Stackable is a prototypic platform. It's very different than the way people consume, the way people buy, the way people access customization is very new. And I would say that right now the main focus is on again, I like design and I like problem solving, right? And that is organizing data and deploying it in a way that makes sense. So right now we're kind of back to design in a way. Like we've launched this platform, and now what we're doing is we're learning how people use it. We're learning how people, what they like and what they don't, and we're improving it. We're offering little tweaks. And I would say that what we should expect in the medium term is we are going to be putting out a collection of our own that are pre-baked designs that people can buy outright. Amazingly, as much as I thought people loved customization, because we get requests for it all the time, we find that when people are in the configurator, it's a little bit overwhelming for some, not for all, but there's a chunk of the population that wants to have, 10 available SKUs that they can just buy. And so right now we're starting to think about, okay, so rather than having this open platform for people to configure their own designs, we're thinking now, okay, well, what can we give them that we know they'll like, that they'll just buy like that? And so it's business tweaking and learning from our audience right now.
All right, thank you, Jeff. It was indeed a pleasure having you with us. If there's something Bharat would like to add to that and also conclude the session.
Design is a space which is very, as you said, artistic. It is very artistic to us. So how do you differentiate design and a product? What is the differentiating line between artistic and that design aspect? If you get what I mean to say.
I do. And I would be careful even in framing the question. So product can apply to both. I think there can be product that is the result of design, and there can also be product that is the result of artistry. Look, I think artistry by definition is a personal expression. Okay. It is not necessarily the gathering of constraints and data and then organizing those constraints and data into something that solves a problem. It is purely expression. So when you're creating a beautiful chair that is, a certain lovely shape that comes from somebody's mind, they sketch it and then they create it. To me, that is far more about art than it is about design.
Sure.
Again, using the chair as an example. But when it actually aims to solve a specific problem, that's different. And so now again, people can say that they're designing by making it ergonomic or designing by making it, I don't know, maybe there's an invention around the materials that they're using. And I would say that starts to enter the realm of design. But again, we tackled ergonomics a long time ago. So now I would say that that's less relevant. What is relevant is the materials, the way it's processed, the way it's machined, the way it ships, all that stuff. So in summary, it's really just the difference between expression versus sort of an agnostic opinion, and letting the data kind of turn into something through trial and error and through applied research. And when it's just the Frank Gehry sketch and then that turns into a building, I think that's artistry.
All right, then let's just
Perfect.
call it a wrap. And we were really pleased and glad to have you with us. And we look forward to more such collaborations in future.
All right, you guys. Well, thanks again. And thanks for accommodating me on this front. Okay.
Thanks for your time, Jeff. Thank you. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.